The movie starts and we see a girl in the forest. Her name was Veera. She was looking for her dog. But suddenly, she gets startled seeing something. When her mom arrived, Veera was holding her dog in her arms. A knife was stabbed into the dog. Veera tells her mom, "Mom, he has stopped crying," meaning her dog had died. Veera's mom then calls a brain doctor. He gives Veera a dog toy and says, "Here, play with your dog." To this, Veera responds, "My dog is dead. How can I play?" In reality, Veera was deeply traumatized by her dog's death, which is why she was receiving treatment from this doctor. She had stopped talking to everyone. But with the doctor's treatment, she was improving and had started talking again. After this, we see Veera sitting in the car with her mom, whose name was Olga. They arrive at a house, which Olga had recently purchased. Since Olga had divorced her husband, she moved into this house with her daughter, Veera. Veera loved the house. Olga messages her ex-husband, Victor, saying, "We've moved into our new home, and we love it." Veera is also becoming normal. This way, she keeps informing her husband. As the night falls, the lights start flickering. But Olga doesn't pay attention to it and goes to put Veera to bed in her room. Then, as she was heading to her room, she notices the attic door open, even though it was closed earlier. Surprised, she goes to check the attic. The attic was empty except for a box. Olga hadn't seen this box before, so she opens it to find a diary and several small items inside. At the same time, she hears a sound from downstairs. She assumes it's Veera, awake and coming upstairs to her. But as she stands up, she feels like a shadow just passed by her. Thinking it was her own shadow, she shrugs it off and goes to her room to sleep. The next morning, she messages the agency, saying, "You told me the house was empty, but there's a box in the attic with a diary and some items. Find out whose it is." Meanwhile, Victor comes to pick up Veera as per the court's agreement. Veera stays with her mom on weekdays and with her dad on weekends. Veera, excited to go, packs her things because her dad had promised to take her horseback riding. But Victor says, "First, we'll spend some time with my friend, then we'll go riding." Hearing this, Veera gets angry and says, "Then I'm not going with you. I'll stay with Mom." She disliked her dad's friend. Olga convinces her, saying, "Just meet her for a while, then you can spend the whole day with your dad." Veera agrees. After they leave, Olga begins setting up her office. But suddenly, she gets a severe headache, as if the room itself was changing. Strange thoughts cross her mind, but before she can make sense of it, her phone rings, and her headache disappears. The agency calls, saying, "We checked with the previous owner, and they say there was no box in the attic." Hearing this, Olga becomes curious about whose box it could be. She decides to check the box again. This time, she pulls out the diary and starts reading it. Reading the pages of the diary, she gets a little scared because it was the diary of a crazy killer. The killer had written all the details of their murders very precisely, describing how they tortured their victims and then killed them. Olga thought, "This box cannot stay in my house for even a second longer." Thinking this, she takes the box outside and places it near the trash. Then she goes to clean the attic but gets shocked to see the box still there, exactly where it was before she took it out. The box had returned to the attic. Frightened, Olga starts to leave the house, but Victor calls, giving her even more terrifying news. Veera has cut her own hand, and we are in the hospital. Hearing this, Olga rushes to the hospital. There, Victor and his friend are with Veera. Olga angrily asks Victor's friend, "Why did you even give her a knife?" Victor's friend replies, "I was working in the kitchen when Veera insisted I give her the knife to help me. I took it back from her, but she somehow took it again and cut her hand herself." Olga thinks there's no hope. How careless people are. The doctor arrives and reassures them, saying, "Don't worry, there's no danger. Just change her dressing daily for 4 or 5 days and she'll be fine." Olga tells them, "I'm leaving now. If Veera sees me, she'll insist on coming with me. I'll take her tomorrow." But we know the real reason was the box. However, she hides this from them. Victor's friend suggests, "If you're renovating your house, why don't you stay with us?" Olga agrees and spends the evening at Victor's house. At night, Olga asks Veera, Why did you cut your hand? Victor stops her and sends Veera outside. Angrily, Olga says, What are you doing? I was asking her a question, and you sent her out. Victor replies, It was just an accident. She didn't do it intentionally. Stop making it a big deal. Olga says, Do you think this is a small matter? Did you see what she did to her dogs? Yes, something had happened to the dog, and we'll learn about it later. Hearing this, Victor says, It's just a coincidence. Don't create new stories. This silences Olga. The next morning, Olga somehow convinces Veera to let her go home alone. She calls the doctor to her house and tells him about the box. The doctor doesn't believe her, but agrees to help. They take the box and leave it outside near the trash. But when they check the attic again, they are shocked to find the box back in its place, exactly where it was before. This surprises the doctor, who starts reading the diary. Meanwhile, Olga feels strange vibes in the room and recalls the killer's diary describing how they tortured their victims. The doctor notices the names and ages of the victims in the diary. Olga searches the internet for these names, but finds no news about their murders. She tells the doctor, maybe these murders written in the diary are just imaginary. The doctor says, looking at the timings and details of the murders, it doesn't seem imaginary. For example, a victim was tortured at a specific time, but died exactly 1 hour later. From the box, they also find a pair of earrings that seem old. All of this makes Olga very worried because she had invested all her savings into the house. She feels everything is falling apart and doesn't know what to do next. The next day, both Olga and the doctor are examining the diary again. They find a sketch of a woman whose face looks very similar to Olga's, except for a scar on her forehead. The doctor says, I have a friend who is a handwriting expert. She might be able to tell us about the killer and whether this diary was written by them. Victor arrives to drop off Veera. When the doctor notices the bandage on Veera's hand, he asks her, What happened to your hand? Veera replies, It's nothing, just a small accident, and goes to her room. Olga puts Veera to bed and stays with her. The next morning, Olga finds a strange drawing in Veera's bag. In the drawing, Veera had sketched herself cutting her hand, with blood flowing out and a knife in her hand. Seeing this, Olga recalls the day the dog died. That day, the dog was hit by a car and was badly injured. Victor brought the dog home to take it to the hospital. But when Olga came to check on the dog, she found a knife stabbed in its belly. It was Veera's doing. When Veera told Olga he had stopped crying, she meant that she couldn't bear to see the dog in pain. So, she ended its suffering by killing it with a knife. After this incident, Veera began receiving treatment from a brain doctor. During one of her therapy sessions, the doctor asked her, Do you think your parents were right in taking the dog to the hospital? Was what you did okay? Veera replies, What I did was right. The poor dog was in pain. Mom and Dad didn't understand its suffering. I couldn't see it in pain, so I ended it. The doctor then asks, Why did you cut your hand that day? Veera says, It's all my dad's friend's fault. She doesn't know how to take care of me. Veera had deliberately cut her hand that day to blame her dad's friend and prove her wrong. She didn't like her. The next day, Olga and the doctor go to meet the handwriting expert. They hand her the killer's diary. After examining it closely, she says, This diary can be divided into 3 parts. The first 2 parts describe in detail how the victims were tortured and killed. But the third victim, Martin, seems to have just been tortured and may not have been killed yet. The killer hasn't written about Martin's death yet. It's possible they haven't killed him yet. And yes, there's a mention of a 4th victim whose name and details are not mentioned. The killer refers to this unknown victim repeatedly. It could be that this 4th victim was the first one, and that the killer doesn't remember it because it happened in their childhood. The expert continues, Whatever it is, the killer seems deeply depressed. There's a lot of pain and anger inside them. Hearing this, both Olga and the doctor are shocked and ask, What did you say? The killer is a girl? The expert says, Yes, based on the handwriting, it's clear that the killer is a girl. Moreover, the way she writes is unique. Normally, we hold a pen with our thumb and index finger, but the killer holds the pen with her thumb and middle finger. Hearing this, Olga becomes very worried and thinks, What should I do? Should I keep my child in a house with a psychopathic killer? On top of that, I always feel like the killer is inside the house. The doctor tells her, you should leave Veera at Victor's house for now. We'll decide what to do next when things calm down. The doctor also gives Olga some medicine to help her relax, as she was extremely distressed. After taking the medicine, Olga goes to take a bath, but hears a sound from her room. When she goes to check, she sees a shadow. Trying to catch it, she chases after it, but suddenly, someone hits her hard on the head. She falls to the ground. Hearing her scream, the doctor rushes in and helps her. Olga tells him, the killer is in the house. I saw them, and they attacked me, but the doctor doesn't see anyone. Suddenly, they hear someone running in the attic. The doctor assumes it must be the killer, so he goes to check. In the attic, Olga is sitting with the diary, still reading it. She tells the doctor, look, earlier, this diary mentioned that Martin was only being tortured. But now, it says that Martin will die in the next 48 hours. It feels like whatever the killer does automatically gets written in this diary. We need to find Martin and save him. When Olga looks closely, she shows the doctor the sketch of the woman whose face resembles hers. She points out, this woman has a scar on her forehead, and now I have a scar in the same spot. I don't understand what's happening. But I've realized one thing. Whatever is written in the diary about the past, present, or future eventually happens in real life. She begs the doctor, please believe me. Let's save Martin. The doctor agrees, and they extract Martin's details from the diary. They find an address that leads them to a restaurant. When they get there, they find the restaurant is still under construction. They ask a woman there about Martin. The woman, holding a baby, says, this is my son. His name is Martin. According to the diary, Martin should be 32 years old. Both Olga and the doctor are confused. They wonder, does this mean Martin will die when he turns 32? This thought leaves them both stunned. They return home, where Olga says, I'm worried because 48 hours are almost up. How will we save Martin? Suddenly, Olga notices Veera's hand bandaged. Because of this, Veera couldn't use her index finger to hold a pencil. She was using her thumb and middle finger instead, just as the handwriting expert described. Olga takes away Veera's pencil, saying, you won't do any drawing until your hand heals. Veera gets angry at her mom. But when Victor arrives, Veera runs to him. Victor brings a gift for Veera, a box. It's the same box from the attic that keeps returning. Olga is stunned and doesn't understand what's happening. Olga takes the box and Veera to the attic. She asks Veera, do you know anything about the items inside this box? Veera says, no, Mom, not at all. Hearing this, Olga sends Veera out of the attic. When Olga checks the diary again, it now states that Martin has died. This deeply disturbs Olga, and she feels helpless, thinking, I couldn't do anything to save him. The doctor asks Olga what's wrong, and she tells him, the psychopath killer is none other than Veera, my daughter. She may seem innocent now, but in the future, she's going to become a dangerous killer. All the murders she will commit in the future are already described in this diary. Crying, Olga says, what mistake did I make in raising her that she'll grow up to become a killer? But I won't let her become one. Please help me stop this. The doctor reassures her, saying, she's still a child, and we are treating her. Don't worry, she'll get better. The diary also mentions that due to some wrong vibration, she committed her first murder. If we find out what that vibration is, we can prevent it, and she won't commit her first murder. If she doesn't start, she won't become a killer. Olga says, that makes sense, but if her first victim was the dog, then she already killed it. So, what can we do now? The two of them visit the handwriting expert again. The expert explains, all the murders written in the diary happened when Veera grew up. The dog's death was something she did as a child, thinking she was doing the right thing to relieve its pain. That act cannot be considered her first murder. Her first victim will be someone else, the fourth victim mentioned in the diary. It's possible that person did something to Veera in her childhood, making her so angry that she took revenge when she grew up. The first victim might not even be listed in detail in the diary. The next day, during Veera's birthday party, Olga feels completely helpless, sitting while Veera plays happily. Victor gives a gift to his friend, a pair of earrings. Seeing them, Olga is shocked. These are the same earrings found in the box. The killer's box, which belonged to Veera. Now Olga realizes that Veera's first victim will be Victor's friend. Veera dislikes her so much that she will kill her when she grows up. When Olga brings Veera home, she decides, I will never send Veera to Victor's house again. She's determined to do whatever it takes to stop her daughter from becoming a killer. Victor keeps calling Olga repeatedly, insisting on taking Veera, but Olga keeps ignoring his calls. A few days pass. Olga starts to doubt her earlier thoughts, wondering if the first victim might not be Victor's friend. She goes to the attic and stands by the box saying, I know, Veera. You are here. Tell me what this vibration is that you wrote about in the diary. I want to help you. Suddenly, Olga sees a shadow running, and at the same time, hears a sound from Veera's room. Olga rushes to her room, but the door is locked. She knocks and asks, Veera, are you okay? Open the door. But the door doesn't open. Olga steps back and charges into the door, forcing it open. Just as she enters, Veera also opens the door from the inside, causing the door to hit her face. Veera starts bleeding and sits in a corner, crying. Olga comforts her, apologizing. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please forgive me. That night, Olga stays with Veera. The next day, Olga is still worried about Veera and doesn't send her to school. Instead, she starts teaching her at home. Victor arrives at the house, angry because Olga had not sent Veera to his place for the weekend and had ignored his calls. Seeing Veera's injury, he furiously asks, What are you doing to my daughter? As the argument escalates, Veera, frightened by their shouting, runs away to her room. Victor storms out of the house in anger. Later, the doctor visits Olga and asks, Why aren't you bringing Veera for her sessions? Olga firmly replies, She doesn't need therapy anymore. I'm her mother. I'll take care of her and make sure she doesn't become a killer. Frustrated, the doctor leaves. Shortly after, Victor returns, but this time with the police, accusing Olga of violating the court order by not letting Veera visit him. Left with no choice, Olga sends Veera with Victor. That night, at Victor's house, they sit down for dinner. Victor's friend tries to be friendly and tells Veera, We'll go out tomorrow and have some fun. Veera, irritated, angrily responds, I'm not going anywhere with you. You're just my dad's friend, not my mom. Understand? Shocked by her words, Victor scolds Veera harshly, which makes her upset. Veera runs to her room. Meanwhile, back at Olga's house, she and the doctor try to figure out what the vibration mentioned in the diary could mean. Suddenly, the ground starts shaking. It feels like an earthquake. At the same time, Victor's house also begins shaking. Victor and his friend rush to Veera's room to take her outside, but she refuses to go with them. After a while, the earthquake stops. Olga, frightened, tells the doctor, Could this earthquake be the vibration mentioned in the diary? What if this is what triggers Veera to become a killer? With this thought, Olga and the doctor rush to Victor's house. On the way, they find their path blocked by a fallen tree caused by the earthquake. At Victor's house, while he and his friend are asleep, Veera quietly sneaks into their room holding a pair of scissors. She picks up the earrings that Victor had gifted his friend, revealing how they ended up in the mysterious box. It seems like Veera is about to harm Victor's friend. Instead, she cuts her hair in a fit of silent revenge. Suddenly, Victor's friend wakes up, startled. Veera runs out of the room. Victor catches up to Veera, furious. What are you doing? Have you gone mad? He yells. He scolds her harshly. Veera, crying, sits by the stairs and says, I want to go to my mom. Just then, Olga and the doctor arrive at the house. Olga, using her spare key, enters the house. As she does, she hears a loud noise and rushes to see Victor's lifeless body at the bottom of the stairs. He had fallen to his death. Veera is sitting nearby, trembling. It turns out that Victor, in his rage, had been yelling at Veera. Unable to handle his anger, she pushed him. Victor lost his balance, slipped, and fell to his death. Seeing this, Olga is devastated. She begins sobbing uncontrollably, realizing that this was Veera's first murder. This incident would set off the chain of events leading to her future killings. Despite all her efforts, Olga couldn't stop Veera from taking her first life. The next morning, the police and ambulance arrive at the scene. The doctor tells Olga, "You can't take Veera with you now." An investigation is underway. However, when Olga finds herself alone with Veera, she secretly takes her, puts her in the car, and drives away. As they drive, Olga tells Veera, "The person you pushed down the stairs was your dad. I thought you'd grow up to be a killer, but you've already become one as a child." She adds, "I won't let you kill anyone else. We both need to die." Olga speeds up the car and deliberately crashes it. The screen goes black. In the next scene, Olga is shown severely injured but alive. Veera is also alive and sitting nearby, with only minor injuries. Veera looks at Olga with an intense gaze as though thinking, "You tried to kill me. I'll settle the score with you." Here, we recall what the handwriting expert said. Veera's first victim must have done something to provoke her, awaken her rage, or hurt her deeply. Victor's death may have been accidental, but Olga's attempt to kill Veera has made her daughter's first true target. Veera will grow up to become a serial killer, and her first victim will be her own mother. The box kept returning to the attic because the earthquake opened a time travel portal. Through this portal, the box kept appearing and disappearing. Even years later, Veera lived in the same house, committing murders and hiding everything in the diary. This is why the box kept coming back. With Olga as her first victim, Veera becomes the psychopath killer, and no one is safe from her. With this terrifying ending, the movie concludes.